My name is Clara Bennett. I am 34 years old, living alone in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. The walls are bare. The furniture is old and tired, like me. Morning light falls quietly on the empty floor. The silence is heavy. I wake to it every day. My husband, Daniel, left 2 years ago. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a note on the kitchen table. He said he needed to find himself. I didn't understand. I still don't. The apartment felt bigger after he left. The rooms seemed colder. Even the air felt still. I tried to fill it with sound, music, TV, but it never worked. The emptiness stayed. I used to love cooking for him. Now, I make meals for one, sometimes forgetting to eat. The refrigerator hums quietly. It reminds me that life goes on, even when it shouldn't. I go to work. I come home. I sleep alone. Nights are the hardest. The city sounds fade, and all that remains is the echo of his absence. Friends call sometimes, but I don't answer. I feel ashamed. Not for being alone, but for being so fragile. For letting myself fall apart when someone else left. I tell myself I'm fine. I tell myself I can manage. But the truth is, I don't know how to move forward. I glance at the bedroom. Our bed is untouched. I still make it every morning, though. It's my way of pretending that things are the same. I close my eyes at night and remember him, his laugh, his hands, the way he used to brush my hair back. Memories sting, but they are all I have left. Sometimes, I dream of him. Not as he was, but as someone I could never reach. In the dreams, he is happy. Smiling. Far away. And I wake up with a hollow ache in my chest. I lie in bed for a long time, feeling the cold sheets press against me. I wonder if he thinks of me at all. If he regrets leaving. My life has become a series of quiet routines. The days pass in muted gray. I walk the same streets, buy the same groceries, drink my coffee in silence. No laughter. No warmth. Just the shadow of a life I thought I shared with someone who isn't there anymore. Even now, I feel like I am only half alive. Waiting for something I don't understand. Waiting for a change I don't believe will come. The apartment is still. The city hums outside. And I am here, lost in a life that no longer feels like mine. It started with a letter. A simple envelope slipped under my door. No name, just my own, written neatly. I hesitated for hours before opening it. My hands shook slightly. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Part of me wanted to know. Inside was a note. Short. Polite. Apologetic. It mentioned Daniel. That he was alive, yes, but that he had been struggling in ways I could not have imagined. He asked for forgiveness. He did not ask to come back. He did not promise anything. I sat on the cold floor, clutching the paper. My chest felt heavy. I didn't cry immediately. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Relief? Fear? Confusion twisted in me like a tight knot. I hadn't expected this. I had thought he was gone forever. The next day, I found myself walking near the cafe where the letter said he sometimes went. I wasn't sure why. Part of me hoped to see him. Part of me wanted to convince myself I didn't care. The bell above the door jingled as I entered. He wasn't there. I left quickly, feeling both disappointment and an odd sense of curiosity. Then came the small messages. Short texts. Friendly, cautious, careful not to cross boundaries. I didn't reply at first. I wanted to, but my heart refused. The thought of opening myself to him again, it scared me. He had left once. Could I risk trusting him again? One evening, a mutual friend mentioned seeing him at the park. My pulse quickened. I walked there slowly, pretending to look at the trees. And then I saw him. Not the man I remembered. He looked tired, older, quieter. His eyes met mine for a brief moment. And something inside me softened. It was not joy. Not happiness. Just a tiny spark. A flicker of something unfamiliar. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. But I also wanted to stay. To see if the spark could become something warmer. I returned home that night with my hands trembling. The apartment felt colder than ever. But the thought of seeing him again, of perhaps understanding the life he had lived without me, lingered in my mind. Fear and need danced together, confusing me. I wasn't sure what to do next. I only knew that my world, so quiet and still, had shifted ever so slightly. It started with small gestures. He didn't demand anything from me. He just showed up at the park sometimes, sitting on the same bench, reading quietly, watching the world go by. I didn't speak at first. Just nodded when our eyes met. One day, he brought coffee. Black, exactly how I liked it. I hesitated, then took it. Our fingers brushed. I felt a strange warmth. I thought you might like this, he said softly. I didn't reply. I just sipped, letting the heat fill my hands. We began to talk slowly. Short sentences, careful words. How are you? I would ask. I'm okay, he would reply. And you? I learned to measure my tone, hiding my fragility, letting him see just enough to know I existed. Some days, we walked together. No conversation. Just steps side by side. Sometimes, he would point out a bird or a tree. I noticed things I hadn't before, the wind in the leaves, the smell of wet earth. The world felt less gray when he was near. He helped me with small chores. A broken shelf in the kitchen. Carrying groceries. Nothing grand. But every act of care sank into me, softening the edges of my loneliness. I didn't realize how much I had missed simple companionship until I felt it again. One rainy afternoon, we shared an umbrella. I stayed close, letting the warmth of his body brush against mine. Do you want to come inside? He asked quietly. I nodded. We stood by my window, listening to the rain tap against the glass. He didn't touch me. Just stood there. Safe. Respectful. I realized trust was growing, fragile but real. I never thought I'd see you again, I whispered one day. His eyes softened. I didn't either, he said. And in that silence between words, I felt something stir inside me. Something tender. Something I had almost forgotten. Meals became easier. We cooked together sometimes. He chopped vegetables, I stirred sauces. Small laughter escaped us over burned toast or spilled flour. The apartment felt warmer. The rooms didn't echo emptiness anymore. They held presence, quiet and gentle. One evening, he left a note on my pillow. "I'm here. Always." My hands shook as I held it. No promises. No demands. Just presence. And that was enough to let hope creep in, fragile and cautious. I began to look forward to our meetings. Not with certainty, not with expectation, but with gentle curiosity. With him, I felt seen. Not as the woman abandoned. Not as someone fragile. Just me. And slowly, I started believing that maybe, in this quiet, careful way, we could heal together. It began with silence. Days passed, and he didn't reply to my messages. Not a word. The small warmth we had built seemed to vanish overnight. I stared at my phone, waiting for the familiar ping, but it never came. When we finally met, his eyes were distant. He avoided my gaze. He spoke in clipped sentences. "I've been busy," he said. That was all. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. The spark we nurtured felt like smoke slipping through my fingers. I tried to ask questions. "Is something wrong?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Nothing," he said. But the words didn't reach me. His hands didn't brush mine. The gentle laughter was gone. Our shared routines, walks, coffee, quiet evenings, felt hollow now. I discovered the truth accidentally. A mutual friend mentioned seeing him with someone else. Not in passing. Not casually. Together. Laughing. The sight I imagined broke my chest. My hands trembled. My lips couldn't form words. I wanted to scream, but the sound lodged somewhere deep, strangled by disbelief. I thought of all the small promises we had built. The trust, the tenderness, the fragile hope. It felt like a lie. My heart ached with betrayal, not from malice, but from absence, from distance, from being forgotten. The apartment felt colder than ever. I wandered through empty rooms, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock. Everything reminded me of what I had lost, even in these small, careful steps we had taken together. I wanted to confront him. I wanted answers. But I feared the truth might hurt more than the silence. And so, I waited, alone, feeling the gap between us widen like a canyon. Fear and confusion twisted inside me. How could someone I trusted so deeply disappear into a life I didn't know existed? The days blurred. I couldn't eat. Sleep was shallow. Even the wind outside seemed harsher, colder, slicing through the fragile warmth I had allowed myself. I felt abandoned again. Not by the man I loved, but by the life I thought we could have shared. And in that quiet, painful space, I realized something terrifying. Love, even when returned, could vanish in silence. And sometimes, the hardest thing was accepting that people we trust could live a second life without us. I couldn't hold it anymore. The room felt too small, too heavy. My hands trembled as I held my phone. My eyes were wet, and I couldn't stop the tears. The truth, sharp and unforgiving, hit me like cold wind. I thought of all the moments we shared, walks, coffee, quiet evenings. Every gentle gesture, every small laugh, every touch, and now it felt like it never existed. Like smoke slipping through my fingers. My chest ached, heavy and impossible to lift. I sank to the floor. The cold tiles pressed against my legs. I shivered, not from temperature, but from the ache inside me. I cried until my throat hurt. Until my hands shook so badly, I could barely hold a tissue. My tears fell in silence, echoing in the empty apartment. The wind howled outside. Rain tapped against the window. I could feel it on my face, wet and cold, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My mind replayed the discovery over and over. Seeing him with someone else. Laughing. Living a life I wasn't a part of. A quiet realization settled in my chest, heavy as stone. He had chosen a second life over the one we could have shared. And I had been foolish to hope. Every soft word, every gesture, every cautious step toward trust had been met with absence. I felt broken, raw. Shaking. Vulnerable. The room seemed smaller, darker. I wanted to scream. To throw something. But I had no strength. Only tears. Only the cold pressing against my skin. Only the knowledge that the person I had loved could exist so close, yet be unreachable. I whispered his name into the empty room. Daniel. It was not anger. Not hatred. Just grief. Just loss. Just the unbearable pain of loving someone who had already chosen a different path. And in that moment, curled on the floor, wet and trembling, I understood the depth of heartbreak. How fragile trust could be. How quickly hope could vanish. And how, sometimes, the person you believe is yours forever can slip away without warning. I sat by the window the next morning, the rain having stopped. The apartment was quiet, but the heaviness had lifted slightly. My hands were still shaky, but I could breathe again. I realized I could not change what had happened. I could not rewrite his choices. But I could decide how to live with mine. Pain had carved its mark, yes, but it had also taught me something. I was stronger than I knew. I began small. Walking outside without waiting for him. Cooking meals for myself, savoring the warmth of my own hands. Letting the sun touch the empty rooms. These were tiny acts, but they reminded me that life continued. That I continued. I understood now that love does not always return the way we expect. That people we trust may live separate lives. And that healing is quiet, slow, and tender. It does not erase the hurt. But it teaches us to carry it differently. One evening, I poured tea and sat on the balcony. The city lights shimmered, distant yet comforting. I felt a small, steady warmth in my chest. Not joy, not happiness, not yet, but a sense of balance. A whisper of hope that I could live fully, even after heartbreak. I closed my eyes. Let the air fill my lungs. Let the silence wrap around me. And I felt, finally, a quiet peace. A life broken once could be mended, slowly, carefully. And I would be here, whole again, in my own time.